watching the game, though, the people I was sitting with, we were talking, there's just no way Scoot and Dame are going to be able to play together. They could play together. Like, they could coexist, right? Like, two smaller guards, 2'6" guys, but Scoot's at his best with the ball in his hands. Dame is at his best with the ball in his hands. And if the Blazers were to keep Damian Lillard into training camp, try to make this ugly, try to get the best offer that they can, I think with those two guys, like, yes, you get a mentor in Dame. He's going to do what a veteran should do. But on the court, I just don't even think it's for the best for Scoot's development. I think he'd be better off getting that freedom to kind of just run the show with all the other young, talented players that they have. Like, what are your feelings on kind of Scoot? Did that cross your mind at all watching those games?
I think you can look at it in just the Scoot-Dame dynamic, but you have to zoom out and take everything else into consideration. At that point, you're going to have four guys that are on the floor like that you want to play a lot. You're going to start talking about not starting Sharpe, not starting Anfernee Simons, that type of thing. The three-headed monster of the Simons, Sharpe, and Scoot thing is going to be very fun. Like, I like it. Like, long term, I think it's going to like maybe pose some roster questions we can talk about. But the Scoot. The Scoot.
What are those roster questions?
I think that it implies. I made this argument in a video I did about Scoot. I finally got out my eval dive on Scoot.
Martin
put it out.
Scorsese. The year
Irishman. Yeah. It was I was joking. I was like, it was starting to become the Guns N' Roses album, the Chinese Democracy. I was like, this thing's finally going to come out and stink. I don't want to people talking about it for too long.
Verno used to have a line with our podcast. He says, "It's not born to run."
Exactly. Yeah, it's. Yeah, but my thing with him is that, I do think the three of those guys, while fun, sometimes you'll have these young cores that in the short term will be like, man, this is a blast. But long term, you do have to kind of level up and start asking different questions. I always compare it to the company culture thing. You always have the startup, the fun times where it's people are having beers at their desk and, going and having luau's on Friday. But at some point, you got to be serious about becoming a real entity that is trying to achieve. And, so it's for the Trailblazers, I think eventually, if you wanted to, and this is me just, spitballing with you here back and forth. I mean, to me, it seems like they would have to have big time switchability, big time mistake coverers, mistake erasers on the back end. Maybe that could be Jeremy Grant. I think you'd have to have a pretty great rim protector behind those three guys if you wanted to keep them together. What do you think about that?
You're talking just simply Scoot, Simons, Sharpe.
Yes, offensively super fun, but defensively, I think it's going to be an issue to have three guys that size on the court.
Well,
yeah,
I think at some point, obviously you trade Dame. At some point that happens. At some point, I also think you trade Simons, and so that would distill it down to Scoot and Sharpe. And Sharpe's got some size to him, has a bit of fight on defense. We'll see how he develops over time there. Scoot Henderson, 6'2", he gets attacked. You detailed it, very well in your video about how sometimes he kind of just, I don't know, doesn't close out hard. He goes through phases where he's just, the effort intensity isn't there. But then you see him kind of locking in a stance against Amen Thompson, ready to go. When he locks in, he can be really tough. And as part of a collective defensive unit with a ton of versatility and a great rim protector you're talking about, I think Scoot could fare very well on defense as part of that type of atmosphere and situation that they can be part of in the future. But for Portland, I also think your point about them having a great rim protector also applies to offense too. Having someone who can be that downhill vertical threat would be perfect with Scoot Henderson in the years to come. Mm-hmm. Kind of like how Russell Westbrook, granted Steven Adams isn't the most vertical guy, but he's an awesome screener, a great finisher at the basket. Scoot's downhill attacking would pair well with that type of player construct. So with them, maybe Yusuf Nurkic can kind of be like a C- version of that or a D+ version of that for his first year in his career. And then in the years to come, you find an upgrade over him, which isn't hard to do. So I think for Portland, I think they're in a position now where you're kind of just in the early stages. It's a question for down the line that you're talking about with the Sharpe, Simons, Scoot trio. And where they are now, I like their young players. They're kind of developing. They have Jeremy Grant still under contract. They just re-signed him.
Yes, they do.
Chris Murray, 5-year deal. Chris Murray, solid two-way player as well. They're building out kind of the foundation at this point. Now it's just about maximizing that return for Damian Lillard, whether it's this summer, whether it's to Miami, whether it's to a surprise team, or whether it's dragging this into the season and trying to get a better offer in January or February, or even waiting until next summer.